Okay, hello everyone. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Xenia Liederman. I am an AmeriCorps serving with Blue Zones Project and UC-VEG as Community Garden Coordinator. And I hold these monthly garden workshops on a various amount of topics, and today's is about gardening on a budget. So this is actually part of the Community Gardening Together series, which had a bunch of cooking classes, and now we have a garden workshop as well. So thank you for joining us. We are having Halie Cousineau. She sent a presentation about all tips and tricks of how to garden on a budget and in small spaces and make the most of your resources. So she will have a presentation, and then I will answer any questions that people have along the way. And we will have a raffle at the end of the presentation for those who are on Zoom, and that is a $25 gift certificate to DC Farmers Co-op. So I am going to get started and start her presentation. And feel free to, if you're watching on Facebook, ask any questions in the comments and we will get to them after. And if you're on Zoom, just put them in the chat and we will also get to those after.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this little webinar.
One second.
You have at home to make your garden beautiful. My email is on this page and will be also on the last page, so always feel free to email me any questions after these webinars. Okay, so some quick tips I'm going to go over right now. One, I always push for people to try out composting. So you can do it in a small space, get a little bucket at home and put your scraps in it. And if you have a spot, you can put it outside in just like a 5-gallon bucket, add some scraps and some soil. If you have leaves or shredded paper, mix those all up. And it'll take about a month to 3 months for soil to start going. And then you'll want to use it a little bit later, probably 3 to 4 months later. And it will totally depend on the amount of food that you have, the heat, the water. But I always think it's a great project to give it a go. And if you have any questions, you can contact me or other master gardeners in your area, and they'll have lots of advice on how to do it. And again, you can do it in a small space. You'd probably just want to have your compost outside. So if you have a deck, a small yard, anything like that, composting is totally an option. And that makes it easier so you can make your own soil. But it is a project that takes some time. So make sure you don't think that you'll be able to make soil next week. It does take a few months, and it does depend on the amount of soil and food scraps that you have. So my next quick tip is, and just to let everyone know, I'm going to go into detail about most of these throughout this presentation. So another quick tip is to use items that you have at home, like toilet paper, yogurt containers, egg cartons, and more, to either start your seeds or to grow in. And again, I'll talk about that. Then use things like your refrigerator, which I'll explain in a minute, and really use your space well. So I'll go over secession planting, container gardening, planting inside, and trying to regrow some vegetables that you buy at the store. So composting, like I said, it takes time, gets rid of your food scraps, and you can do it in a small space. You won't need to buy anything. You can buy containers that move and make it easier for you, and it keeps it in a small space. And sometimes it definitely helps with reducing rodents. getting attracted to that smelly old food. However, you do not need to buy anything. You can do it in a 5-gallon bucket, poke some holes in the top so it can breathe. And if you have worms in your yard, collect them and stick them in there. Worms will make your compost happen so much faster. And I have a video on that. I should have introduced myself. My name is Halie and I work for Oregon State University. And I have videos on how to do at-home gardening. So I will share in a link the at-home gardening video with worm composting that explains how you can do this at home. It's very easy. You can either blend up your food scraps or put them in whole, maybe chop them up if there's citrus or garlic, anything like that. That might be an intense flavor, and worms will eat it up. You don't have worms, you just put it in there, have it mixed with some carbon, so paper, leaves, hay or cut grass, and then with your food scraps. And then all that together with air and water, it will decompose into soil. And again, this takes some time, so don't expect that you can make your soil right away, but it can help make good soil for your garden. I do have a puppy, by the way. Very good timing, so they're going to interrupt me every once in a while. Sorry about that. And now a little bit of a tip for when you're composting, if you want to give this a go. You want to water your soil, your food scraps, because it makes it go faster. But if it starts to smell, that means it's a little too wet. So you're going to want to add leaves, shredded paper, newspaper, and items like that, or dry food. Okay, so the next thing is that I love talking about is upcycling, reusing the items that you have at home to garden in. So toilet paper is one of my favorite things. We all use toilet paper and we have that little cardboard roll at the end of the day that is useless that you can recycle or throw out. But it's spectacular to start your seeds in. You take your toilet paper roll, cut 4 slits in the bottom and tuck it in, fill it with soil, plant your seed, and just about when that paper towel, toilet paper roll starting to decompose, you'll want to transplant it into the ground. So you don't need to buy fancy trays or anything like that. You can start seeds in a toilet paper roll. I have a link here to a sheet that we've created for OSU telling you how to do this. I'll also, the next slide will have a little preview of that. So you can link to that for more information on how to do that. Yogurt containers, though, are also a great option. The small ones are great for starting seeds or growing microgreens. The big tall ones are really great to grow smaller vegetables. I also have a link to growing in containers and a video on how to grow in it, because some plants, a lot of plants like about 12 inches of soil to grow in, but some other ones like shorter ones. So you can get smaller, shorter carrots or green onions, things like that. Lettuces, those don't need a very deep dish. So you can grow them in those tall yogurt containers inside your house or outside. But when you are growing in containers like that, you are going to want to poke a hole with scissors, maybe a ballpoint pen if you're stabbing through it, for drainage. And then you can take the top of the yogurt container, put it on the bottom like a little cup to collect any water that drips. And again, there's a link to how to grow in containers with more tips like this that you can follow along with. For larger plants that you want to grow in, if you don't have like a 2-gallon jug of milk or other beverages, you can also use big Tupperware boxes or old buckets. You can grow in those for tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, all of those plants that like a little bit more depth. Potatoes are another one. This is our page on how to upcycle. So again, as you can see here, it talks about those toilet paper containers. You can see a little old water bottle growing lettuce in it. So take a peek at this. The link on the right is also to this page, and I can send live active links for you guys to click on and read later. So these have a lot more tips on how to do this, and you can always feel free to email me or our Food Hero website, which will just email me with questions that you have about this. So definitely get creative. There's a lot of items at home that can hold plants in soil, whether it's an old colander, you can put soil in there and grow plants in it. Just make sure whenever you use and create a new pot that it has a hole in the bottom for drainage, because you're going to want to water it and not have the water sit in the bottom of the plant, but you want to have it be able to drain out. Okay, so seed starting. My little tip for seed starting is to use your refrigerator. So seeds love a warm temperature to start growing in, to germinate, to sprout out of that little seed. But a lot of times gardeners will use heat pads. So you have a nice warm pad that you plug into the wall to heat it up, and you put your seeds on there, you get them nice and moist and happy, and they're warm, and then they germinate. But sometimes those pads are very expensive. So you just put your plants on top of your refrigerator. Your refrigerator will be nice and warm because of the engine back there. And you want to water your plants. If you have a Tupperware, you can put over a little plastic wrap over the top to keep the moisture in there, because when it's warm, it will evaporate the water a little bit faster. So if you cover it with saran wrap or something like that, it kind of makes a little mini greenhouse. And you want to keep it on top of the refrigerator until it starts sprouting those first little baby leaves. After those first little baby leaves sprout, move it over to a window. So a south-facing window usually gets the most amount of sunlight. But sometimes when I'm growing little plants in my house, I don't have the best windows. So in the morning, they're in the back, and then I move them to the front of my house in the afternoon to get sunlight, because they are going to want to get about 8 hours of sunlight to sprout and get nice and big. Now, if your sprouts are starting to lean over, that means they're leaning towards the sun. You can rotate them or try moving them to a sunnier location. Once they get a little bit bigger, about 3 inches tall, I start moving my plants outside on those sunny days. That way they get the nice airflow, they get the sunshine, and usually I can find a sunnier location than just one of my windows. We do have another tip sheet on how to start your own seeds. So it talks about some of those tips that I just said, and it just gives you more in-depth information on how to start seeds, because growing from seeds is more economically better than growing when you buy starts, but sometimes it's hard to get past that 3 to 4 inch tall plant. So follow these and hopefully that will help you out. But always, if you can, try starting from seeds, because you get a lot more seeds than just one plant, and that allows you to keep going. And I'm going to talk about different ways to strategize on how to use those seeds productively. And we're going to talk about secession planting, planting in containers, and try planting inside. And that all has things to do with those seeds. Sorry about those pups. I'm going to jump to our pages that we've created. Oh, sorry, this is the container planting. So if you want to start planting in containers in your house or outside, if you don't have a huge garden space, you can grow in pots. Like I said, you can use 5-gallon pails, you can use Tupperware containers. And here are some plants that are suggested to grow in containers. So whether it is inside or outside, this is what we suggest. So here are some plants that can grow in it: carrots, eggplants, herbs, leafy greens, love really shallow bases. Peas are a great option. They do like to crawl up things, so make sure you have either some sticks in your containers for them to crawl up, or you put it against a wall, or if you have a little trellis. Peppers, potatoes, radishes, summer squashes. Those really like a big container. They can sprawl. So if you grow in a container, make sure there's space around the container for those leaves to grow out into. Tomatoes also are another great container plant. So secession planting, I had just mentioned this. Secession planting is really efficient for using your seeds. Sometimes you get a packet of seeds like carrots that they give you 200 seeds, and you think, oh my gosh, why am I buying a packet with 200 seeds of carrots? What am I going to do? So this is just a preview of one of the worksheets that we're creating. It's going to be available in about a month, I'm hoping, maybe even just a few weeks. So you guys are getting a sneak peek on tips on how to utilize those seed packets more efficiently. So we have 4 different ways that you can do it. One, you can do a crop that they kind of overlap in season. So we have an example. Peas love to start really early. They like the cold weather. So you start them, you're growing them outside, and while those peas are growing, you start a tomato plant inside. And so you kind of mature it early. You don't have to plant it outside, you start it inside, and they kind of overlap. And just when those peas are fading away and they're not very happy, and you've picked them all and you've eaten them all, you plant the tomato plant right where the peas were. And those are also really great plants to grow together. Peas first, they help put nitrogen back in the ground, and then tomatoes like taking it out. So it's also very efficient for your soil. Carrots are another thing that you can start really early and start growing. And then inside start growing lettuce. And when your carrots are just about to be pulled out of the ground, you have your lettuce plant almost ready to go outside. So you pull your carrot and plant your lettuce back in the ground. Or you can have 2 or 3 different types of the exact same plant, but have different varieties, which is our number 2 suggestion for secession planting. So you get, maybe you love carrots. I love carrots. And I want to grow a carrot that grows really early in the spring, that loves cold weather and maybe is good in frost. And I start growing that and have that planted for about a month or 2, maybe a month. And then I start with a different variety that likes a little warmer weather. So you can start staggering them throughout the whole season, and you get carrots that maybe don't mind too much heat. And so you plant those last, and those grow throughout the summer. So these are just some tips on how to be maybe a little bit more efficient with the seeds that you're growing, and you can start growing them all the time. This is really helpful when you want to grow in the spring, throughout the spring, into the summer, and then back into fall. You can start using those cooler weather seeds in the fall, because spring and fall kind of match in the temperature. My tip is, if you want to grow in the fall, is to start your seeds indoors in August. And you're starting them indoors, not to protect them from the cold, but to protect them from the heat. So you're going to be planting cooler weather crops like we have here: arugula, beet, bok choy, broccoli, carrots, green onions, all of those. You start indoors in August in your house where it's ideally not over 80, and get those seeds nice and germinated, and they're about a month inside. And then you start moving them outside as the weather starts to cool down. And these are just efficient ways for you to utilize a full seed packet. And then we have our 2 last suggestions. Well, number 3 is kind of a version of companion planting. So some plants really like to be planted next to each other. Either they can grow up on each other, like peas growing, or beans really, and cucumbers growing up on a sunflower because it acts as a trellis. Or you have plants like growing carrots underneath a tomato plant, because carrots don't need a lot of space for the roots and helps break up the soil to help out the tomato plant, but it utilizes the space well. So if you have a small space, try companion planting. You can grow plants closer to each other because they help each other out, and or they utilize each other in a beneficial way. My next slide will have a list of those plants and what will help each other out. So our 4th suggestion is staggering your plants. So as you see here, you have 3 carrots at different ages. My suggestion for things like carrots and beets, even lettuce, and all the other plants is start one, let's say April 1st, and you plant them, and then wait 2 weeks later and start planting a whole other set of it. So every 2 to 4 weeks, you put seeds in the ground, but not a lot, just a few, just enough that you want to harvest. So that means every 2 weeks, once it starts being harvest season, you have fresh crops, but not too many. So you don't have 50 carrots, you only have maybe 10. And then the next week you have 10 more, and then the next week. So that's staggering your plants so you can utilize your seed packet to the maximum degree. You can plant all your seeds, but they're not ready all at once. So you have too many vegetables, you're handing them out, and you really want to eat them all yourself. So you stagger them. So then they're ready at a staggered pace. So this is the companion planting chart. This helps you decide what to plant with your dominant plant. So I really want to grow carrots, or I really want to grow tomatoes. So carrots and tomatoes are really good together. Like I said, they can be planted kind of next to each other. Carrots don't love the heat in the summer, but tomatoes do. So let your tomato plant grow big and bushy, and it has not lots of shade on the ground, and you plant your carrots underneath there. So they love the shade from the tomato plant, and then they help break up the soil for the tomato plant to get some air in the soil for the tomato. Cucumbers are really good with corn because they love to crawl up the side of corn. Beans also do the same thing. They can also grow up the side of sunflowers. Lettuce and tomatoes grow really well together. Again, tomatoes create a lot of shade, and the lettuce in the summer does not like the heat, so you need to shade it, which you can do with a cloth if you want. Just put, an old white t-shirt or a pillowcase kind of hung up over an area if you have plants that don't like a lot of heat. Or you can do this and just grow big, tall plants and grow little baby plants underneath it that like the shade. Again, if you have any more questions about this, please feel free to email me, and you can go to our website and find these pages that have this helpful information if I'm going through this a little fast. Okay, so one of the last subjects that I want to talk about is regrowing some of these vegetables that you love, that you buy at the store, and you can just bring them home, eat some of it, and then regrow it so you don't have to go back to the store. One of the most common things that I regrow is green onions. I go to the store and get a green onion and clip it off. You have a little garnish on your meal or on your soup, whatever you're using your green onions for. Clip it down just to the bottom where there's about 1 or 2 inches of the stem with the white little bulb and roots sprouting out. Save that, stick it in a cup of water, and it just regrows. And I just keep clipping it down. And after a while, if you don't put it in soil, it will die, but you get so many more shoots out of it than just one go. You do not need to buy it so many times. And if you want, you can stick in a little bit of soil so it has some more nutrients and it will regrow, and you can just cut it like your hair. So the next one that does the exact same thing is leeks. Leeks are kind of like a really big green onion. So you can do the exact same behavior. You buy it, you trim it down just 1 or 2 inches from the root base, and you put it in water and let it sprout. And you can just keep trimming it and eat your leeks fresh. You can have it on the windowsill or the countertop in your kitchen. It's really easy, accessible, and you just don't need to go buy these vegetables every single time. But like I said, you can always plant these in a container or outdoor in a garden space if you want, in some soil, even in a yogurt container, and have it grow even a little bit longer than that cup of water will provide. So celery is another option. Celery and romaine lettuce, bok choy, cabbage, those kind of things, those all act the same way. So you cut it, you eat your lettuce, you eat your celery, but you want to leave that base, that bottom, and you put it in water again, but you want to leave this one in a sunny location and it'll start to sprout. So once these start sprouting, they form some leaves, or celery, they form a little stocky baby celery. Let it get a little thick. And then you are going to want to plant these in a small container, large container, or out in your garden space. And then they will regrow the plant, which is totally cool, because then you do not need to go to the store and buy 2 heads of lettuce. Just buy 1, use it, plant, let it sprout in some water, then replant it in soil, and then there you have your second lettuce. A tip for lettuce, if you are growing lettuce, you don't need to always take the whole head of lettuce. You can just trim the outside leaves, just like you would with kale or chard, and then your plant just keeps growing and keeps growing. But you can, if you want, chop the whole thing off and take the head of lettuce. It just won't regrow the plant again. Unless if you do this and you put it in a thing of water, let it grow a little bit again and put it back in soil. But that's just a little tip for harvesting. Potatoes are another excellent option to grow from the store. So there are seed potatoes that grow better. But as we all know, I think most of us, we've sprouted potatoes before. So if you've ever had a potato, you put it in a cabinet, it's nice and dark, and you forget about it. And then these have these little buds popping off of it. So those are roots that are trying to regrow potatoes. So it's super easy. You leave your potato in a dark corner, kind of forget about it, and then pull it out and there'll be little sprouts. It might feel a little soft. That's totally okay. You can cut your potato sometimes in half or in fourths. So what you're looking for is called an eye. It's just a little dent. Either it's a dent before it starts growing, or if it's sprouted already, you can see all the little sprouts. And you just need 1 sprout off your potato, and you cut it, I suggest in half or in fourth, it's a really big one. And you take that little sprout, that eye, and put it in some soil. You want the eye or that sprout facing upward so it can grow up and out. And you can plant this outside in your garden or in a large container. They do take up the ground because they're growing underneath. But yeah, you put it in a large container in some soil or out in your garden, and you can grow a whole new potato plant, which will produce quite a few potatoes. So either a half a potato or even a fourth a potato can produce a whole plant of many more potatoes. So that's a really efficient plant to regrow from the store. Another one is garlic. I personally love growing garlic. You can grow it in fall or in spring. So if you get a garlic head and you pull it apart, there's a whole bunch of little cloves. You'll want to put those cloves or a whole head of garlic on top of a cup of water so the roots go into the water. I have also the link here is to a sheet on how to do this. So you can follow along with the sheet later for directions. And I have videos on this, which my last slide will have all the links for this. So the garlic, once it starts growing more roots, and it'll have a little green shoots like poking out of the top of your garlic clove. And that means when it's about 2 to 3 inches tall, maybe 3 fingers or 4 fingers tall, you'll want to plant that outside. Garlic does not need a large container. Again, you can grow that in a tall yogurt container with some holes in the bottom or outside. If you want to grow garlic, if you can, try getting garlic that was grown in your area or maybe a similar environment, because that's what it likes. Sometimes I get garlic and it's from like Argentina, so it's not going to grow the same in Oregon as it is in Argentina. Although I have tried it and some of them take really well, so who knows. But give it a go. Sprout your garlic, plant it in the ground. If you plant it, try planting in November. You wait all winter. That frost will break apart your clove and make all those little cloves. It's very cool. And then you'll harvest around 4th of July. And we have a sheet on how to do that. So you're going to want to stop watering it about a month before you harvest it. But again, the sheet will give you those directions. If it's not November and it's springtime, you can also do spring garlic. So sprout your garlic, plant it in the beginning of April, maybe May, and let it grow all the way till August. And when you harvest it, it will just be one big chunk. It won't have different little cloves, and it will be a little sweeter and a little nuttier. But it's still delicious and it still can work. Or you can take your garlic and just like green onions, put it in some water and let it sprout. You can cut the green bits off the top for a little bit of garlic flavor for your plants. So these are just some plants that I suggest to regrow from the store. That I personally do all of these, and it's fun. It's great for kids to do, and it's also really practical and economic. So that is my presentation on how to garden on a budget. If you have any more questions or want more tips, please email me here. Here are the top link is to my channel on YouTube for the videos that I produce. I have videos on how to garden with items at home, like the reuse items that I talked about, the upcycling, how to trim up your tomato plants so they look good, how to grow with garlic from the store, how to grow in containers, which I go into a little bit more depth about which containers to use. So one hint is don't use black containers if you can help it. It gets really hot and burns and heats up the roots. But if that's all you have, that's okay. Maybe just try growing in a shady area. But then I have videos on how to grow in small spaces outside, how to make your own compost with worms. So please watch those if you want more in-depth information about the topics that I've already covered here. The next link below is a link to all of our garden tips. I run a program, run a program called Grow This. And in spring, we send out free seeds. So if you are interested in that, check out our website and look up for the sign-up sheet. It will probably be in January, and you will get mailed free seeds to you that you can grow at home and follow my videos along on how to grow those. But along with that, we have more handout and tips on how to grow specific plants, how to make your own paper pots out of paper mache with newspaper or just paper you have around your house, and how to do many more activities. So please link on those and email me any more questions. If you have a specific question on how to do something a little bit more economically, like composting or making your own soil, please let me know, and I'm happy to help. So have fun gardening. Try growing from seed. If you don't love growing from seed, maybe get some starter plants. I do suggest getting plants that produce a lot of food, like peppers, tomatoes, eggplants. Those are really good. Zucchini always grows a lot. Those are really good in starts because they produce a lot of food and it's worth your money. Yeah, So have fun, garden, happy gardening, and always email me if you have any questions. Thanks and have a good day.